Hello, welcome to our daily work remote strategies. These are ways and tips that can help you with working remotely, with doing what you do better. We have this idea that you're already doing a lot of things super well, super comfortably, but what if something else were just a little better? Today's tool is about stories, and specifically it's about contrast in stories. So as we start, and as we start to hear about a tool that you can use, here is a question I have for you. What's a story that's important to you to tell? What is a story that you need to tell over and over, for example, for your work? What's a story that's important that you know is important to have at the ready? And I'll tell you what the most common stories are. By the way, some of you may not know us. We're here every day, 11 a.m. Pacific, Monday to Friday. It's either me or me with some coaches or with some business leaders talking about ways that you can improve what you're doing, being more productive, having less stress. Today, we're talking about how you can tell the stories that you most want to tell. And the specific element we're bringing in today is contrast. Sounds simple, so we'll get into it. Let me know in the comments, what is a story that's important for you to tell? And I say important that way because that's how I taught it to my kids when they were little. So they would say the whole word, important, as opposed to important. So what is a story that's important for you to tell? And I'll tell you that most people, when we're telling stories, we tend to have stories in three different categories. And you can think of them, if you're going destination-wise from point A to point B, these are, how did you start? What's the journey? And where are you going? And these are very common business stories. It's how did you get started? Senia, how did you get started in this business, in executive coaching? So that's that story. What journey, which is what's your philosophy of coaching? What's your mindset about it? Who do you coach? What's the journey you're on? That's a story that you may need to tell in your work. And where are you going? And that's the vision story. And that one's wonderful. And I've heard somebody tell me something really fun about that. So somebody who was an employee at a company for many years, the CEO at the company would give quarterly announcements of what's going on and the vision of the company. And this person said, I have heard the CEO give the same talk 40 times, 10 years, 4 quarters. And they said it in a wonderful way, as in, this is consistent. I am hearing this. The where are you going, that vision, it's very clear. And every time that I put more than, excuse me, more than 2 words on the screen, I always like to summarize them with 2 or 3 words, which are, this is really the beginning, the middle, and the end. So how did you start from point A to point B? What's that journey? And what's your vision? Where do you want to go? These are typical stories that you may be asked. So again, coming back to, what is a story that's important for you to tell? So now that we've talked about the most common stories, which is the beginning, the middle, and the end stories, I know it's so basic, but it's really what a lot of stories fall into. And now that I've asked you what's a story that's important for you to tell, let's get into this one component today, which is contrast. So I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to add contrast and how you can add contrast and the benefits of it. You have a story. A lot of us have the story of who are you? Senia Myman, who are you? Senia, the company that you run, Silicon Valley Change, what is that company? That origin story. So let's focus on that in the meantime. Where did you start? How is this happening story? Why is contrast important? So you could tell and I use this word actually very nicely, a Pollyanna type story where things are well and you're looking for what's working well. And you could say, hey, here's who I am and here's how I got my education and went forward in business, and it's all, this is the direction. Or you could tell a story with contrast, with suspense, with drama. And I'm encouraging you that you may have a lot of benefit from doing that. So I'll give you a couple of examples of it. And as I'm speaking, please think about how you can add more contrast to your stories. So let me give you an example. Probably one of the first ones where this hit me, I was a teenager. And I loved my high school. It had so many different extracurriculars and things possible for us to try. I was in an art class that term. I don't even know, 10th grade, 11th grade. And also I was in a theater class where we directed each other in scenes. And this one person was directing me in a scene, just a sort of a solo scene, but he was directing me what to do. And it was wonderful. You know, in high school, you can't ever really find rehearsal space. So we were rehearsing in a corridor between 2 places. And the art teacher, who I really admired, he was walking by and he said, oh, what are you rehearsing for? And my director said, Senia's acting the part of this little girl in this scene. He said, you should put a big trash can behind her. Because if she's acting the part of a little girl, If you put a big trash can behind her, she's a teenager, she's obviously in high school. If you put a big trash can behind her, by contrast, she's going to look smaller. And for some reason, that really stuck with me. Just that idea of bringing in the contrast, putting the contrast in, fabricating on purpose, fabricating the contrast. And that gives a little bit of meaning to what's going on. It's a little bit like people might say these days sometimes, without the bad days, you sort of can't as well value how amazing the good days are. And that's lousy in a sense, because you want most days to be kind of even keeled or good, but that contrast is what adds to a story. So that's one example. Another example is a story that my grandmother used to tell me, and I'm getting kind of a little out of business with this because it's such one of these olden tales, and it's the story of the goat. You may have heard this. The idea is that in this village, this one family says, we have so many people in the house, we have all these family members and extended family members, and we're all living in the same house, and what should we do? So they go to the wise person in the village and they say, what should we do? And the wise person says, go borrow somebody's goat or use your own goat and bring the goat into the house. And the people say, what do you mean? It's already too tight. We don't have any space. What should we be doing? He says, now do this. Come back a week later. So it's awful living with the goat. They hate living with the goat. It's a pain. Everybody's getting on top of each other. They come back a week later and they say, it's even worse. Why is it that you brought this up to us? The way I heard the story is it's the rabbi who gives them this advice, but it could be any wise man in any town. And so they come back a week later and he says, okay, now remove the goat. I say, why'd you have us bring a goat in? Why? That's the contrast. So you've brought in something that's made it even worse and even tighter, and then you remove that situation. So my question to you is, in a story that's important for you to tell, like who are you and what's the business you do, what is the contrast that you can bring in? I'm going to end with that in asking you, what is either something that you can bring in as contrast, or someone who's a friend of yours, someone who you know who has a story that could use more contrast. So think about someone that you know who has a great story, but that could kind of up the drama or up the contrast. And that's my opening and invitation to you today, to add more contrast. Wishing you all the best, wishing you a less contrasty weekend and a more enjoyable, consistently enjoyable and fun weekend. And looking forward to seeing you next week. We're here every day, Monday to Friday, with a guest or without, talking about things that can help what you're doing at work and at home better. 11 a.m. Pacific, Monday to Friday. All the best. Good weekend, good weekend. Bye.